Okay, I think that is my cue to take it away. Thank you guys for joining us on this lunch hour on this very chilly day. If you're watching this live, I am Nichole Huff. I am an assistant professor and extension specialist for family finance and resource management here at UK and with UK Cooperative Extension. So it's always a pleasure to join you guys. So today we are going to be talking about consumer protection. So how we can be better prepared to fight against fraud and scams and identity theft, both on and offline. Right. And so, like Jamie said, I know that we have a small live group here, but if you could just in the chat, I have two questions for you, just kind of to get us started. So first, so I usually ask, where are you from? But today I want to specify. So where were you born? So where do you call home? So what state are you from? Specifically, where were you born? All right, so I'll go ahead and type mine in the chat. All right, so we've got Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, so Nashville, Knoxville, Pikeville, from a little town in eastern North Carolina. Okay, so the second one is more holiday related. It doesn't have to be Christmas, but what is your favorite present? So if you had to name maybe one childhood present, something that was just your very favorite present you received as a child, what would that be? And it's hard to pick just one. Any favorite childhood presents? Roller skates, dollhouse. It is hard to even think. A bike. All right, so a couple bicycles. All right, good. Okay, so I tried to make this relevant, but also not give away what I was doing. And so these are examples of how scammers can get our information online. And so if now I am not, this was just simple fun. I tried to make them generic enough to get my point across, but not that you are revealing too much information. But if you are a social media user, for example, on Facebook, and you'll see these generic posts, like, I bet you can't remember your first grade teacher. Or you'll see, how many, it's fun. Let's share some of our favorites with our friends. And there'll be a list of 20 things: favorite ice cream, toys, street you grew up on. And it will be very similar, if you notice, to what security questions are for banks or credit cards or passwords. And so oftentimes our security questions are things like, where were you born? And so while it can be fun, I'm an extension, so we do icebreaker activities all the time. And so while it generally, they're in good fun, especially if they're in group learning activities, but especially online, if you see types of activities like that ask specific questions, please do not complete them, because you make it public then information. Now the chat is not visible, so you guys are all good. Check with Jamie before, that's not being recorded. But it is an example of how easily we share information that can be used against us in terms of consumer protection. So let's jump right in then. So, and I have to, especially my mother, for example, loves to complete those types of things on Facebook. And I have to say, please take your answers down, Mom. Please take your answers down. Just err on the side of caution when sharing information, especially online. So what we know is that fraud is up and fraud is very underreported. And over the pandemic, the Attorney General estimated there was about a 300% spike in consumer fraud reports in Kentucky after the onset of the pandemic. And we can speculate that that was a lot for things like increased online activity, right? We were all forced online almost overnight, and scammers took advantage of that. But we know that fraud is extremely underreported. And so I'm going to share some numbers with you, but they are they're likely low because of how many people don't report when fraud or loss or scams or identity theft happens to them. So this was the latest data I could get my hands on. It is fresh as of September 30th of this year, so just under a month or two. You know, we see fraud across age groups. It does tend to increase with age. But even, you know, it is not only older adults who experience fraud, but any age group experiences fraud, with credit cards being number one way that credit card or that fraud happens. But social media is also the top contact method. And so how we interact online is really important. And so this is important not just for ourselves, but if any of you are parents or grandparents, and so maybe it is, or you're a sandwich generation, so you are helping an older loved one be safe online, but you're also helping maybe a younger child learn to navigate social media and how to stay safe and protect themselves from identity theft. And because unfortunately children can be victims of identity theft and fraud as well. So it can happen to anyone regardless of age, regardless of income level. And it is really underreported because people feel like they let their guard down, and they have negative feelings about fraud. So if you are a victim of fraud, you feel vulnerable, and you feel there's a lot of shame, research says, that is associated with being a victim of fraud. And so you don't often tell because you don't want people to think you let your guard down. And because of that, it can lead to secrecy about fraud, and it can lead to underreporting. But when a fraud is reported, it helps stop scams, and it can prevent specific scams, but it also can increase our awareness about how to be just smarter consumers. Okay, so you know, what does a con artist look like? When you think of a scammer, like what comes to mind? And you can use the text chat, because anything that comes to mind when you think of what a con artist looks like. Maybe shady, maybe a little slimy, shady, scary. Yeah, and really, this is another trick question, right? A con artist can look like anybody, can look like you or me, or just your everyday person. And because, you know, so we do see, you know, we might have images of like this little fella in gray that is kind of shady and slimy and scary. But what fraud generally is a white collar crime. And because of that, your con artist looks like your everyday Joe. So it can be really hard sometimes to predict who is trustworthy, businesses that are trustworthy. And what we know is that a con artist is actually short for confidence artist. And so you may not have a little bit of trivia for today, but con artist actually is short for confidence artist. And so a con artist, it's their job to make you confident in who they say they are and what they say they are doing. And so they can be use a lot of tactics that that play on our emotions. And so some of the tactics that a con artist might use are source credibility. So affiliating with someone, using credentials, touting experience that they don't have, but trying to promote themselves as a credible source. And so we include this, and Jamie will send out PowerPoint slides for everyone registered that include this hyperlink, along with several other hyperlinks that I'll share. But if you are working with an investor or a financial professional, FINRA offers a way to verify those professional designations. And so a good way to prevent or reduce. We like to say reduce fraud because it's very hard to prevent it. But to reduce your chance of falling susceptible to fraud is to just check resources, check references. But maybe it's affinity. So a con artist will play on affinity. So a trusted member of a group based on similarities. And this can happen in person or online. So a lot of faith-based organizations can fall very prey to affinity fraud, for example. Someone, and many times con artists are very patient. So they will take months to get involved with an organization, to gain the trust of the members, and then act on that trust, on that affinity. And so the same can happen in parenting support groups or online groups, but face-to-face as well. This idea of social consensus. So everybody else is doing it. You're missing out. So if you're skeptical, but everybody else is doing it is a common tactic. This idea of reciprocity. So I'm doing this for you, so in turn you do this for me, and it gets yourself in kind of that double bind situation. Scarcity is another tactic. So limited time offer, exclusive deal, or phantom riches. It's something that you want, but you can't see, but there's the hope of it that can entice people. All right, because scam artists and con artists, they play on our emotional state, this idea of being under the ether. They create a heightened emotional state that makes it hard to be rational. And so while some are absolutely patient and play on affinity and use that as a tactic, many will play on our emotions, especially fear, greed, and urgency. Because fraud is financially motivated, it is considered a non-violent crime and therefore a white-collar crime. But con artists are very good at tricking you into participating. And so we'll talk about types of scams, types of frauds, and examples for how they do this. All right, so what are some of the red flags that you already know about? What are some of the ways that you spot scams and you stop scams? So what are some of those red flags that trigger you to know, hey, let me take a step back? Okay, spelling errors in emails, yes. External senders, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, yes. This deal is only available today. So that limited time offer. Yeah. So Yes, so these and more, right? And so this idea of maybe I'll send you the paperwork later. Go ahead and make this purchase. I'll send you the information later. If there is a high promise of return, but no risk. So 100% guaranteed. If there's any kind of guaranteed profits or prizes. If there are threats of legal action. If they request your personal information, these might be red flags of scams. The spelling and grammar mistakes, absolutely. Recorded phone calls, requesting a yes or by pressing 1. And so what automated phone calls want you to do is interact with them. And so they want to maybe record you saying yes to something or answering, or they want to know that you're really there by pressing 1. And they can be extremely convincing by saying that they are related to you or a child or a business. And we see that scammers often act in times of emergency, for example. So we'll talk about this a little later in the hour, but after a natural disaster, for example, we see an increase in FEMA-related scams or insurance-related scams. And so scammers will target areas that have been hit by a natural disaster because they know that it's likely that they have filed some kind of insurance claim. So they will, just on the off chance that you did, they're going to say, hey, I'm with your insurance company about the claim. If you could press 1, or if you could provide me with this information. The same thing with emails. They want you to click links and messages that could be malware or spyware. And so on social media messages, DM messages, emails, that could click to engage with the scammer. This idea of scarcity, exclusively for you, limited time, that it's creating that sense of urgency, like you're going to miss out if you don't do it. There are only a few left. Now, we've just come off of Black Friday and a Cyber Monday. And so these are also just general consumer economics tactics that retailers will use to get us to purchase. And so, but scammers also use them. This idea that, hey, you're going to miss out on something big. And some other pretty big red flags, if you need to make a checkout or pay only in cash, or maybe pay by wire transfer, internet currency, so crypto, gift cards, something that is hard to trace and non-returnable. If somebody asks you to deposit a check, send back some and keep the difference. Big red flag, but many people will fall very prey to that. If there is an advance payment needed to receive something, or if there is a contract with missing or incorrect information. So ways to prevent scams are declining any kind of suspicious offer. So stop and verify are my 2 biggest tips. Stop and verify. So hanging up is acceptable. Anytime you get a spam text or an email, go ahead and block that number. So, they could be computer generated, but at least you're removing that one from contacting you again. You can get on the do not call list for what it's worth. There are exceptions to that, and again, loopholes to that, but it is a really good place to start. Don't answer door-to-door salespeople or phone calls or solicitations that you didn't seek out. But have a prepared script. So if somebody does catch you on the phone or in person, many times when I'm working with clients, they'll say, I just don't want to be rude. It is perfectly okay to be rude. Err on the side of caution, but have a script. So if somebody comes to my door, shy of maybe being a little cute Girl Scout selling cookies, my general script is I don't purchase anything unsolicited. If we want your information, we'll contact your company. If somebody does happen to entertain me on the phone, the same thing. If I don't hang up right away, I just say, I don't answer questions like this over the phone, and I hang up if I'm dealing with a person. But have a script so that you don't feel caught off guard. That you want to call the company back, that you will take your time, review the information. But it's okay to be rude if you are being cautious. So if it's a real company, they will understand your due diligence and needing to research them. But so give yourself a waiting period before buying anything impulsively. Get things in writing and read the fine print. Check out a source and check the references. If you are purchasing something online, especially if you get an ad for something on Instagram or Facebook or social media or Google or YouTube, that you, before purchasing, take the time to independently research that company. So Google that company's name with consumer complaints. Google that company's name with XYZ company and fraud. Look for a physical address that is connected to the company, and make sure they provide you with complete and accurate information. And then if you suspect fraud, report it. And so you'll get a copy of this. There are many ways to report it. The Attorney General here in Kentucky has a dedicated web site to receive scam reports. You can report it to the Federal Trade Commission, who is, some of the numbers I'll show you are right from the FTC. The Better Business Bureau has regional scam trackers. And so there are regional Better Business Bureaus here in Kentucky. And when you report, it helps notice if there are trends in certain geographic areas. You can also sign up to receive scam alerts. And so you're notified if there is an uptick in scams in your area specifically. You can report to cybercrime and then to identitytheft.gov. Okay, so we're going to transition into identity theft. And so identity theft is quite simply when someone steals your personal information to commit fraud. Now, this can be somebody has hacked your social media account. That is a form of identity theft. It could be that someone has stolen your credit card information. That is a form of identity theft. Maybe someone filed an unemployment claim in your name. That is a form of identity theft. We have seen an uptick of these. The latter was something my family had to deal with, as many Kentuckians did, and Americans this past year and over the pandemic, with unemployment insurance fraud rose significantly to the point where the government websites just really couldn't keep up. And so it can happen to anyone. Again, this is something I do for a living, and we fell victim just by circumstance. But we knew how to address it when it happened. 5 times. So someone says their Facebook account has been hacked 5 times, change email and password each time. And it is so prevalent, and most people have on the continuum of identity theft have had something happen to them. It can be very frustrating. So again, these are numbers that I pulled from Kentucky specific numbers that are for the quarter. And so these are specific Kentucky numbers, but where year to date, nearly 1 million identity thefts have been reported. And again, we can assume this number is low. And with credit card fraud being the top offense here in Kentucky. And so, what could people do with your information? Well, they can do a lot with your information. So depending on how much access they have to you, they can withdraw money from your ATM or bank account. They can use your credit card to make purchases. They can open accounts in your name. They can use your health insurance to get medical services. They can claim tax refunds or government benefits by filing in your name. And we saw that again this past year. They can falsify an identity. So applying for a job, if they are arrested, they could give your name to the police officer making the arrest, even for a speeding ticket, right? But so there are in person and online many ways that a thief can use your identity. And so with social media being them sending things on you, contacting, having access to your online contacts, and it is very scary. It's very pervasive. So how does it happen? It can happen physically and online. So things can be stolen from the trash, stolen or rerouted mail. If you've lost your wallet or purse or any kind of information, your cell phone that might store your information. But it can also be taken online. So phishing or spoofing, and we'll talk more about those types of scams here in just a moment. Data security breaches. So maybe it had nothing to do with you, but a company you do business with was hacked. Malware, skimming, and skimming can happen. It is a digital version of physical theft. So there can be online skimmers, but there can be account skimmers, say in a gas pump, for example, or in you go anywhere you would insert your credit or debit card. Unsecured Wi-Fi is one way. And then there are so many automated ways that identity theft can happen, and hackers who would consider it their job to get into accounts and to hack your social media. So how can you reduce it? Really, you cannot prevent it, unfortunately, but you can reduce it by trying to keep your identity as private as possible. And so shredding and protecting your important documents. And so taking time to properly discard things that have your account numbers on it, any kind of important information, but shredding. And so if you don't have access to a shredder, tearing something up as finite as possible, but many communities will offer shred days where you can bring your documents and shred them in mass facilities. Monitor your statements. And so making sure that you are paying attention to your credit card statement, your bank statements, but also your credit history, and pulling those and checking your credit reports. To see if accounts have been open, if there are small purchases, for example, on your statements that have been made. Many times, criminals will slide in a purchase, and if one or two go undetected, then we'll make a larger purchase. So creating strong passwords and keeping up with them, it can be very difficult to keep up with passwords, but trying to keep up with them, changing them, considering your social media posts very carefully. What are you putting out there online, and who has access to it? Like the icebreaker, which was a very benign. If we were to do that in person, we would have a much a longer one, but to drive home that point that we share our information pretty easily. Using secure Wi-Fi, so looking for the little lock symbol in the corner of your URL or the HTTPS, and making sure that you are making encrypted transactions, that you are on verified servers. So using a card with a chip and a pin, retrieving your mail promptly. So if you're going to be out of town, make sure you have someone that you trust retrieve your mail, or through the post office, put a hold on your mail. But if you're going to be out of town, especially during the holidays or for any extended period of travel, not letting that mail stay in your mailbox, shredding documents and filing important papers away. Okay, so some warning signs of identity theft is if there are withdrawals or purchases you can't explain, if you miss a bill or two, or something doesn't come in the mail. And so it could be a fluke. But it could also be a sign that, hey, I need to pay attention to make sure that this just didn't get lost in the mail. And things like vehicle registrations. We recently received a second notice and we never received a first notice. And so, of course, my trigger went off that, okay, it could be accidental, but let's keep an eye on it in case there are other things that we may be missing. Because if it did get lost in the mail and somebody finds it, then that puts your information in their hands as well. And you can sign up for informed delivery with the U.S. Postal Service. And so if that's not something, it's a free service they offer so that you can see what has been sent to you, what has been scanned, what you expect. You can report it if something doesn't come through. But it's one layer of another way to protect yourself. So if you suddenly get an unexpected bill, if you get a call from a debt collector that isn't yours, if you have a purchase, a check not go through, or a card not go through, if you have a health benefit, so if you get the summary of benefits, pay attention to those in case something has been claimed that was not yours. Or if you get some kind of notification for the IRS. We do a lot of consumer education around tax season, because that's when you may get something that claims a benefit that you did not indeed receive. So what happens if this happens to you or you have reason to suspect it? Well, report it. So depending on the level of identity theft and the level of access to your accounts, report it to the Federal Trade Commission, and they have their recovery plans that will guide you through steps of what to do. The same, you can report it to the Kentucky Attorney General's office, and there are additional information and steps on there. You can reach out to myself or your local county extension professional who can provide you with more information about steps to take. And so one of the most important steps is to check your credit report. And make sure that if there is any suspicious activity in an account or a report, that you check right away. So, for example, when the unemployment insurance benefit claim came with my husband's name on it, we right away pulled all of our credit reports, checked all of the activity on our accounts, and it looked like it was an isolated incident, but we reported it right away, and then we made sure to monitor our accounts. But both the FTC and the Kentucky Attorney General's office, as well as Kentucky Cooperative Extension, can provide you with steps to take if you feel like you have been the victim of it, because quick action is very important. So if fraudulent activity happens with a specific company, contacting that company. So if it's through your employer, let your HR office know. If it is with a specific credit card company, let them know, or a specific merchant, but contacting them. So like I've mentioned, reviewing your statements, your credit reports, looking for other signs of identity theft. You can file a report with your local police department. Again, depending on the severity of the identity theft, you may want to, and it can be a very gray area of whose jurisdiction it is. But what that does when you file that report is it gets something on record to say, hey, I am a victim here, and it helps us substantiate some of your claims as you fight to maybe restore your credit or clear your purchases or whatnot. You also can consider fraud alerts or freezes on your account. And I'll talk in just the next slide about what is the difference between those. So if you want to receive a free credit report, you can do this during the pandemic. You've been able to do it weekly, but generally you can request free credit report once a year from each of the three bureaus through annualcreditreport.com. This is the only federal regulated site that provides free credit reports. So make sure that you are requesting it through Annual Credit Report, and that you are not on a fake site with a similar address, or for a company that asks you to pay or subscribe for a service. Now, there are other ways that you can pull your credit report. You can pull them directly from one of the three bureaus, but being in the habit of pulling your credit report to monitor for fraud is smart, but it's very smart if you feel you have been the victim of identity theft, is checking right away. So the difference in fraud alerts and credit freezes: an alert, if you put it on your credit report, you can call one of the three bureaus. It notifies the other. It lasts a year. Businesses can access your credit, but you have to verify your identity, and so it makes it a little harder. It adds a layer of protection against an account just being open. Now, an extended fraud alert lasts for 7 years, and this is for victims of identity theft with a police report. But then a credit freeze is going to be the extreme. It restricts access to your credit reports. There cannot be any pulls against your credit. It lasts until you lift the freeze. You need to contact each of the credit bureaus, and then you get a PIN or a password to lift it in the future when you're ready. And so depending on that continuum of identity theft, it is an option. Okay, so we're going to wrap up our time together just kind of talking about some popular scams. And so what come to mind? Scams that you've heard about locally, recently, in the news, any scams that have crossed your path recently? You've heard about in the news, read about somewhere, experienced yourself? Like I mentioned, unemployment scams have been, skimming at gas stations, yeah. And so a colleague of mine, who I'll mention on one of the last slides, she's had this happen to her husband a few times. She always uses that example: skimming at gas stations, royalty scams, grandparent scams. Yes, just call flat out. Give who did they claim to be when you got a phone call asking for your account number, your bank? Yeah, and so phone calls and text and emails can look extremely official. And so my parents, I'm from North Carolina, as I mentioned, and my parents were visiting a few months back, and so yeah, my dad received 2 texts within the same day. One was legitimate and one was not, both claiming to halting access to his account because of travel. Now, one was the protections provided by his credit card company when he went to make a purchase simply at Jimmy John's, because they recognized he was out of state and it looked suspicious. But the other was somebody impersonating his bank, and so he was nervous because he knew it was a chance of fraud, but he knew to verify, to not click on any suspicious links, and to check it out. So yeah, all of these are examples of fraud. So again, I pulled these dates. They're very current. They are as of they're year to date as of Q3 here in Kentucky. So in Kentucky alone, imposter scams, so somebody pretending to be somebody they are not, are the top reported fraud in Kentucky. Year to date, over 15,000 fraud cases have been reported in Kentucky in 2022. but that accounts to nearly $30 million worth of reported losses this year alone. And that's just 3/4 of this year. That's not with Q4. And so this is a very lucrative field, and with a median loss of $500. And what we know is that it's underreported, so these are likely much, much higher. So we're going to talk just about a few different types of scams. And so several of the ones I'm about to mention are imposter scams. And so that is when somebody pretends to be somebody they are not. They are an imposter. But another common scam are phishing scams. When a scammer pretends to be someone else to get your information. So it's an imposter scam where they phish for your information. So they need important information from your bank or credit union, a print or inheritance, a shipping tracker link. So these are very common, especially around the holidays. You may receive a random text saying, track your delivery. Now, if you're like me and have probably placed 25 orders in the last couple of weeks as I do my holiday shopping, if I don't know any better, or to stop and make sure that that is indeed an order I purchased, I might click that link very quickly. And so shipping tracker links are very common. Something saying your payment to Netflix has been declined this month. Click this to enter your correct information. So don't click that link. In fact, go directly to Netflix, pull up your Netflix account, and then you will see. And the same thing with Amazon or many different automated, very common subscriptions. You may get an email saying your account was declined. A request to update your credit card information. So posing to be, phishing for your credit card information by pretending to be Netflix or you name. I say that because that's one I get often. Netflix and Amazon are the two probably most common phishing emails I receive. But that your credit card information has expired, please click this link to re-enter. You click that link and it looks just like Amazon or it looks just like Netflix, when indeed it is a fraudulent website getting your information. So always stop and verify. If you get that and you're questioning, could this be legitimate, delete that email, log in directly to your account, and then or contact that company directly. And so beware of clicking links. And so, these, if we were live, I would show you how if you hovered over those, it would be to very scammy sites. And so often, just hover your mouse over a website to make sure it is exactly where you think you're clicking, an email address to make sure is it indeed from Amazon, and you'll hover over that return email address and you will see it is indeed from a very, very long name or some kind of misspelling in the name. And so always checking before you click links. Yeah, getting a fake bill in the email, that is one for sure. So other common ones, grandparent scams. So claiming to be, the caller claims to be a child or a person in distress. It's not hard to figure out the name, or they'll muffle the name, or if you're a grandparent and you have a grandchild, and so it's really easy to tap on a hypothetical situation that hits home for someone, but that you need the money immediately. They stress the urgency and secrecy. You don't want somebody to know. They don't want, you're the grandchild and you don't want them to know, it'll get in trouble. So always stop, hang up, call that person, call someone who can get in touch with that person. And verify. Never respond over the phone unless you are sure it is who you think it is. A romance scam. This can happen in person or online, but it is extremely common with online dating. So where they will play on that affinity, that relationship they have built to get money from you, or they will stand you up for an in-person date because a car has broken down, but they need money right away. Can you send them money so they can meet you in person? And this is a common scam. As I mentioned, charity scams and home improvement, across the state, we have seen an uptick in these types of scams because we have seen an uptick in disasters this past year. So, both in the eastern part of the state and the western part with tornadoes and with flooding, many times scammers will impersonate someone from FEMA. They will pretend to raise money on a GoFundMe account or something similar, some kind of crowdsourcing account, and have this heart-wrenching story, but the money doesn't go. And it's unfortunate for people who need assistance, but it is always important before you donate that you verify that organization. We'll see home improvement scams again with people coming door to door after a natural disaster and offering to do some kind of home improvement, but then will collect money and never perform the service or whatnot. Advanced fee scams, telemarketer scams, sweepstakes, fake checks. These are very common. So someone in the chat, door to door, wanted name and phone number to give a quote for a lawn service next spring, but wouldn't leave a business card or brochure. Isn't that interesting? And so, yeah, like noticing that is indeed a scam. And so having that script, not accepting. We live in a neighborhood that has posted everywhere, no soliciting, and that doesn't stop anybody from soliciting. So having your script prepared, not giving out your personal information. The fake check scams, these are all advanced fee scams. If you receive a check in the mail that says that you are entitled to some kind of refund of some kind, verify it with your bank, take it in. Take it to your bank. It is their job to help you vet it. And because sometimes these are real. We have gotten checks in the mail from a piece of property we sold 15 years ago, and some kind of escrow account is closed out. And of course, my initial thing is, let's be suspicious. Let's take it to the bank, let them decide. And in that case, it was actually our money, which was a blessing. But always be skeptical and enlist the help of someone who can help you verify. Tech support scams. And so these are really prevalent online. So making sure that you are indeed visiting that company and that it is their IT that you are dealing with, that it is not an imposter who is looking to do malware. So if you're one to Google a problem with your phone or your laptop or your computer or your tablet, making sure that you're actually talking with the tech support at that company. But it also could just be any kind of customer service. It could be fraudulent. And so going directly to that company's website. Imposters who threaten. And so fear is one of those tactics, the ether that con artists will use. And so, targeting you based on your age and claiming to be from Medicare or Social Security, or the IRS, and that, or your student loan collection, and that you will be turned over if this isn't done immediately, but not giving in, instead stopping, verifying with that company. Online purchase scams are really high during the holiday season. I have a teenage daughter who all the time sends me things on her Christmas list that are from, one-off Instagram ads or TikTok or some kind of influencer. And I have to do a really good job of vetting those companies to see, is it even legitimate, right? And so this is a growing scam category. You could pay for a product you never receive. There is no physical existence of this company, or it is in another country. Or you receive some kind of dupe. It's fake, low quality, it's an incorrect item, but there's no way to track it. And so one way to protect yourself there is to purchase through a third party who can, so if you're on Etsy or eBay or PayPal, but somebody that can help vet and get your money back. But that you are possibly Googling the name of the business with the words fraud or customer complaints, that you are getting on their website and you are scrolling the About Me section, that you are looking at their customer service section to see that they have a physical address, and then, you know, in a separate web browser looking up that physical address. Because scammers cover their tracks, and but making sure that you indeed are purchasing from a reputable seller and that you have a way to track your money. Employment scams is another that you may be hired to do a service that you're never paid for, that you are required to, so it can be from an employer or an employee. But that scams can be false. So we're kind of nearing how dangerous is TikTok? Yes, so that is the question, right? And so that could be a whole other webinar in internet security, and I think it would be a very good one that your daughter uses it. So mine does as well. And I think that the best way that we can protect our teenagers with online and consumer protection is, yes, to have their account set to private, to make sure that we educate them on not clicking links in DMs or messages that they didn't receive, even if it's from somebody they know. That it could be that their friends' accounts were spammed. Knowing who they follow on TikTok, for example, the influencers they follow, what they're exposed to. I'm a parent myself, and this type of internet security with social media is something I am constantly learning how to protect my kids, because I have my two oldest are teenagers, and they do each have their own phone and how. So what we do is do our best to set parental controls, making sure accounts are private, making sure that at any time we have the right as their parent to take their phone and look at their searches, to never accept requests from someone they don't know if they are unsure, to vet it with us. And so it is, I don't know how dangerous it is, but we always proceed with skepticism. And I try as a parent, this is, my personal purview, is that, I need keeping them from online social media platforms is not realistic. So the best I can do is teach them how to be safe consumers. But I feel you there. So other ways, doing your research, using sites that are encrypted. So looking for the lock symbol in that URL to make sure that you are, that it says HTTPS, there's a S on it, but that also has the little lock symbol. Not paying with cryptocurrency, with gift cards, with wire transfers, something that is one and done, but that you have ways to be refunded, to fight things like for example, you can fight a purchase if you've used your credit card to pay for it and it is fraudulent and you don't get your material. But if you've sent with a gift card, if you've paid with cash, you may not have a way to track that. Never send money to get money. And so I'll kind of leave you with a couple of just, again, and you'll have these in your email, just ways to report fraud, even if it was a small scam, but always taking the time to report it, because that's how we track it. And that's how places like Better Business Bureau like the FTC can learn the tactics that scammers are using. A lot of the material that was used in today's presentation was adapted from one of three. It's a series that we have on identity theft developed by our Senior Extension Associate for Family Finance and Resource Management, Kelly May. If you're interested in learning more about any of these specific programs, you can contact myself or Kelly or your extension agent. If this is something you're looking to have any kind of more in-depth programming on, let us know. And social media would be an example of that. All right, so that is all I have for you. I know we're kind of at the top of the hour, but I will take questions if there's anything I can answer for you or more information that I can get. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. All right, so thank you. Yeah, thank you. It is a lot and it's constantly evolving. It is so hard to be a smart consumer. I operate under the guise of skepticism until proven otherwise. So stop and verify is the biggest tip I can give you. And if you are a parent that is either parenting a young adult or is sandwiched in helping older adults navigate cyberspace, really take the time to educate them on how to be smart consumers, not giving out information, restricting what they put online, and how just decreasing your vulnerability as much as possible. And I have let my daughter know too, that with a debit card or credit card, she doesn't have a credit card, but she has a debit card. And if she ever loses that, not to be scared, to say, I lost that, oh no, but to instead let us know right away so that we can cancel it right away, that we can put stops on it right away, but to not fear consequences, because I would never want her to be fearful of acting getting in trouble, right? I'm losing my debit card, I'll get in trouble, but for her to understand that a quick action is the best. And so anytime there's been a link she's clicked on that might be suspicious, or if she ever acts first, to let us know immediately so that we can kind of make sure that to safeguard her. All right, well, thank you all. You'll receive the links in your email, but I appreciate your time today. And I'll see you again for another webinar in January, I believe.